I'm Jordan Rayner, and this is the Word Before Work. Today we're starting a new 4-week series here on the Word Before Work called Paul and the Call to Create. Let's read 1 Corinthians 9:20 through 23 together. Here's what it says. To the Jews, I became like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law, I became like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law, but am under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. To the weak, I became weak to win the weak. I have become all things to all people so that by all possible means I might save some. I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings. The Apostle Paul is one of the great heroes of the Christian faith, the man the risen Christ chose to help spread the gospel and accelerate the growth of Christianity throughout the world. While Paul's work as an effective preacher is well known, what the church almost never talks about is the fact that throughout his career planting and preaching to churches, Paul also worked as an entrepreneurial tent maker. The lack of discussion in the church about Paul's work as a tent maker appears to be a symptom of a deeper problem, namely that many Christians tend to treat some callings, such as the call to preach, as more eternally significant than others, such as tent making. But Paul's own writings make clear that he never fell into this unbiblical myth. As we'll see throughout this short 4-week series, Paul didn't view his work as a tent maker simply as a means of financing his preaching ministry. He viewed his work as a tent maker as a core component of his strategy to make disciples of Jesus Christ. But before we more deeply explore why Paul worked, it's critical that we understand what wasn't motivating Paul to embrace this call to create in the art of tent making. First, it's important to point out that Paul did not need to work as a tent maker. In 1 Corinthians 9, Paul makes it abundantly clear that he had the right and opportunity to live as a quote-unquote donor-supported missionary, focusing 100% of his time and energy preaching the gospel in the churches and synagogues. But he chose not to exercise that right. In 1 Corinthians 9:15, he says, quote, I have not used any of these rights, and I am not writing this in the hope that you will do such things for me, end quote. Not only did Paul not work out of necessity, but he also appeared to work tirelessly, far more than was needed to fund his preaching ministry. In 1 Thessalonians 2:9 and 2 Thessalonians 3:8, Paul says he worked night and day. And in Acts 20:34, it says that Paul earned enough money to provide for others, suggesting that there were at least seasons of Paul's career as a tent maker in which he was earning far more than he needed just to financially support himself. So, if Paul could have raised support to finance his preaching, why didn't he? Furthermore, why would the great preacher spend more time than was necessary in his work as a tent maker? As we'll see over the next 3 devotionals, Paul didn't view his work as a tent maker as a distraction from his work to make disciples of Jesus Christ. Rather, he chose to embrace the call to create as a part of a deliberate strategy to become all things to all people, to preach the gospel in word and deed, and to disciple other believers. And this, as we'll see, has tremendous applications for our own work today. Today's devotional only scratches the surface of how God's Word connects to our work. If you want to go deeper, sign up for my free 20-day devotional called The Word Before Work Foundations at twbwfoundations.com. These email devotionals are designed to help you gain a rich understanding of the biblical narrative of work, how exactly your work matters for eternity, and what those truths mean for how we ought to work today. You can sign up right now, again, for free at twbwfoundations.com.